Arteta said that, he'll be on the beach, the players will be on the beach, and the men upstairs have to do what they have to do. So looking ahead to Arsenal's transfer window, in particular the striker position, there's been renewed talk this week of, will Arsenal go for Victor Gyokeres or Benjamin Sesko? I think so. Sesko's release clause now is 75 million. Gyokeres could be available for maybe 60, 70, so a bit cheaper, but of course Sesko is a bit younger, and I guess there's the argument that he's performed in one of Europe's big five leagues, whereas Gyökeres hasn't. So first of all, which one of the two who we assume will be Arsenal's main two striker targets, which one do you expect them to pursue, and which one would you like them to pursue?
That's $1 million question, Ben. Um, I honestly don't know. I don't know at this point. I really don't know who they're going to go for. In terms of who I want them to go for, again, it's kind of like a flip of the coin for me. Basically, I'm so on the fence with it. I don't mind either of them. It's just that whoever it is, I just want them to go and get them early, make the decision. I'll be happy with either of them. I think they're both very, very good. I think Sesko's got the potential to potentially become an absolute superstar, and that's my one sort of fear is if it is Gyökeres, who I think could be great, by the way. I don't get a lot of the negative criticism towards Gyökeres. I think he'd do well at Arsenal. But my big fear is that he comes in, someone else gets Sesko, and then 2 years down the line, we're sort of looking at Sesko like another Alexander Isak type situation. But again, that's for Arsenal to decide. So either of them are quality. They'll bring different attributes to the team, and they will improve the team. I have absolutely no doubt about that. I just want them to go out, decide who it is, and get it done early. Because the last thing they want to do is get caught napping and then suddenly they end up with neither of them, which it would be a very realistic thing because the striker market's going to be so competitive this summer. So many clubs are looking for a number nine. So Arsenal need to make sure they're at the front of the queue, and all the work that they've done in the last 12 months or so leading up to this window, they can execute it really, really quickly. And that's why Andrea Berta has been brought in. But I just couldn't tell you at the moment from what I'm hearing on who exactly it is they're going to go for. We know they like both. We know they've positioned themselves pretty well for both. It's just a case of pressing the button and going for it now. And at this stage, I can't say who it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Andrea Berta is a big fan of Gyökeres, tried to sign him for Atletico Madrid.
Mm.
And, the competition for Gyökeres, it seems, from reports, maybe Man United are the biggest competition. Obviously, he's got a good relationship with Ruben Amorim. And we are actually recording this before the Europa League final, so we don't know yet if Man U will be in the Champions League next season. But say that they do beat Tottenham, they do get Champions League football. Does that make you fearful of a potential, Man United hijack for Gyökeres?
Well, it would make sense, wouldn't it? Again, as I said, it's going to be so competitive in the number nine market, and they need one. There's no doubt about that. And Jokeres and Amorim have worked really well together in the very recent past. So you just, put two and two together, and you think they would certainly be in the market for him. We know that they like Liam Delap, and that could be one that might well happen as well. But maybe they'll go for two as well as him. And this is what I'm saying. I just want Arsenal to be whoever it is they decide on in all the meetings that they're having right now. And I'm sure they have made a decision. I'm sure they would have done. But at this point, Mikel said it after the game in the press conference yesterday, like the plan is set now. So I'm sure in those confines of those rooms at the Emirates and the boardroom and everything, they know that the guide that they're going for. So they just got to go out there and execute it really, really quickly. So you don't leave yourself in a position where something like that could happen, where United suddenly come knocking and the player you've really thought or you're expecting to sign goes elsewhere, and then you're left like, well, what the hell do we do now? Because they can't afford that. They've got to get this summer right. So yeah, it's just imperative for me that the plan that they have, they execute it very, very swiftly with real intent.
Yeah, completely agree. And there's been a couple of new links actually this week. There's been talk from Sky that Joao Pedro of Brighton is one who's maybe on Arsenal's radar, and you wouldn't expect he'd be brought in as Arsenal's new, excuse me, as Arsenal's new number nine. He's better maybe playing sort of just off the striker. Maybe could be an option, either out wide or potentially could you see him working in that number 10 role, maybe sort of competing with Odegaard or taking the load off Odegaard a little bit if he does join?
I don't know. This one doesn't float my boat. I have to say, I like Joao Pedro. He's one of those players that catches the eye whenever I see him. I think he's a nice, tidy footballer. I think he'd probably get sent off a fair few times for Arsenal should he join. But I look at what Arsenal need, and I look at Joao Pedro and his attributes, and I just think it's not the one that really excites me. The only way I'd really get behind that signing if Arsenal went out bought a number nine, then they bought a wide attacker, and then they bought Joao Pedro. If he would be coming in instead of one of those two other positions, I just wouldn't make any sense. I just don't think he's what Arsenal needs. I think he's a good player, but when you look at the money that Brighton would no doubt want for him as well, um, I just can't really get behind that one.
Yeah, that's fair. And speaking of those wide positions that you just mentioned, there's been talk from, I think James McNicholas reported that Arsenal, or Arteta is a fan of Real Madrid's Rodrygo, who would be, speculation over his future's ramped up quite a bit in recent weeks. Looks like he might be on the way out. And like I say, Arteta is apparently a fan. He would be a proper marquee signing. He can play on the right, can play on the left, but of course he would command pretty high wages. You'd expect Real Madrid. I think he's got maybe 3 or 4 years on his contract, so Real Madrid would be in a good position to command a ridiculously high fee. So would you be surprised if this one comes off?
Yeah, I would be, but I would also think it's a kind of a phrase that a lot of people don't like is market opportunity, isn't it? It's sort of crept into the language when it comes to transfers. But if Rodrygo, if you're a club like Arsenal and you want a winger, and all of a sudden Real Madrid make it known that Rodrygo is available, I think as a top club who have really lofty ambitions, I think you have to get into the conversation for that because I just think you'd be pretty mad not to. It's not every day an opportunity like that to sign a player of that sort of age, someone who's achieved that much already. Like you said, is versatile, can play on either wings, can score goals, has played at the very top level, can handle himself, and really star in big games as well. I think you just have to be in that conversation if Madrid do make it known that he's available. I don't think that's happened yet. I think there's still some decisions to be made, sort of from Rodrigo's side and Madrid's side in terms of what's going to happen this summer. And yeah, if it was something that Arsenal pursue, because I'm sure, like you said, James and others have reported that the interest is there from Arsenal, and there has to be because you can't not be interested in Rodrigo. He's a very, very good player. So, but then if they then come to the sort of go out to the market and say, okay, he is available for whatever price, 80, 100 million. I think at Arsenal sometimes they did it with Declan Rice, didn't they? Sort of went over and above. Mikel said it in his press conference the other day when I was there at London Colney. He was talking about you've got a budget, but then things happen. Like if you got a budget for your wedding, and then suddenly your wife comes to you and says, "Actually, we've gone way over. Can we have more money?" And you just do it. When you're buying a house, suddenly you always end up going over it, and you just do it. You got a budget for this transfer window, but if someone like Rodrigo becomes available and you have to stretch yourselves an extra 20, 30 million pounds, for me, I think you kind of just got to do it. You just got to be in a conversation because he would improve Arsenal massively, hugely. The options you could have, just be, and like I said, marquee signing, it would lift everyone, the excitement it would bring. Yeah, it's one of those market opportunity. If it happens, go for it.